Hello and welcome back to another Spider-Man video that is unfortunately very necessary. I've actually bumped this up in order of what I was going to record. So first thing I want to go over is this is partly a review, and the figure does look very nice. Obviously, as with all my figures, I upgrade them, and I'll have a separate video on upgrading like paint and detailing and adding more articulation. But if you've seen the YouTube short, you'll know this figure has breakage points. If you've seen anything online, you'll see it as well. So the main thing I'm fixing is these hips. And I'll cover the smaller things first, like the biceps and the shoulders. But they are also a very likely point of breakage for a lot of people with these figures. Now, a lot of stuff that you get with this can be fixed with hot water. You can see some of the heavy detents that are actually in that shoulder. But I like to make sure it's a permanent fix, and if you heat this plastic up that Marvel Legends uses, you can deform it, and then when it cools down it will keep that shape. But if you heat it up again, it can form back to the way it was. So I like to just cut that material away that shouldn't be there to begin with. But you can also see I had to use hot water to remove that head. That hasn't always been the case with Marvel Legends, a lot of them have. But you can see I physically can't get this head back on. They went through a time where this was fine, and it was working really well. I don't know who they fired and who they hired that has messed up tolerances again. But yeah, a bit of hot water and we can start taking this figure apart. You can use a flathead screwdriver. I use just this tool. You can also get away with using pliers, but you have to be a bit more careful with how close you grab it. I accidentally popped the entire shoulder socket out like that as well. I also cut the limiter off of the actual peg. But you can see here we've got these detents that the connector to the bicep, which is mad because the bicep itself doesn't actually have a socket with detents in. So they're putting a detented peg into a rounded hole, which is part of the problem. So I'm going to go and cut off all of these edges that give it the strong detents. And then I'm going to force this joint into, well, not force it, but I'm going to use the leverage I have on it now without worrying about the bicep breaking off to put it in between those detents, so it's resting on a high point. And then I'm going to throw it back into the hot water, and because it's on that high point, it will force the peg that has those detents that's inside the shoulder to maintain its form, and then hopefully when it cools it will be a looser joint. You can also see there just how much range these butterfly joints actually have. So I don't know why they're putting a limiter on it, because there's no need for it at all. They never used to limit these butterfly joints. But now with this out, I'm also going to just give it a little bit of a push so it can get even further, and again just so it forces the detents to kind of compact a bit and move out of the way of the actual socket. Now actually moving on to the hips. Taking them off, you can see we've got the exact same issue of very heavy detents at the hip joints. I don't understand why they're doing this. Again, the socket they sit in doesn't actually have detents. So they're putting a detented, or like a rigid edge ball into a smooth socket, which is just pointless. So you can use a scalpel, which I'll show later. But this is how I'm doing it. I'm literally just cutting off all of those hard edges to smooth the shape out and make it more round. These are just, you'd probably get them more in Gundam building. They also come with most 3D printers now, so these are just some sharp, I suppose wire cutters would work as well, but these are just snips basically. And you can see I've just gone around and cut all of those edges off. And this will just give a smoother joint, which means it shouldn't catch as much. But yeah, a scalpel would have done just fine. It just needs to be a bit more careful with it. As you can see now that I've essentially forced those detents in there to be compacted, you can lift the shoulder much easier. You've not got to worry so much about the rotation of the bicep. And you can see here, I'm doing a stress test to show you that like moving it quickly isn't going to snap the joint off anymore. And again, look how much smoother those hips look as they are. I don't know why they're still trying to put detents on joints. We've seen them not do detents. I mean, the peg for the head is a good enough show that they don't need detents in everything. But also I'm going to go and take some of the excess plastic out of this. I like to be able to swap heads easily without having to heat them up. So I'm just taking my scalpel and I'm just cutting all that excess plastic out. And you'll see here that even having removed all that excess plastic, it isn't just socketing on. These tolerances are really, really tight, and they shouldn't be. So I'm having to take even more plastic out, and you'll see that I still think it's a little bit uncomfortable how much force I'm having to use to put it on. So again, here you'll see me try and force this head on, and it does socket on. You see it click just there at the very end. But all the movement I'm getting is actually from the neck and not from the head joint. So it goes on and off easy enough now, but I'm not happy that it's putting so much strain on that ball, so bringing the hot water back in, wiping the excess water off of the actual base and taking those plastic shards away. I did get it back on, it moves a little bit more fluidly and I'm a little bit happier with it. Again, that range of movement upwards isn't the best. But onto the articulation fixes, you can see you've still got the gummy plastic issue. I know there are some ways of fixing it where you can cut the entire peg off and put a screw on instead. And obviously that way means it's not going to break because you've got a metal screw instead of a bendy plastic peg. But if you don't want to go through all the hardware of fully upgrading a figure like that, this way works just fine with what you've got. And again, I'm stress testing these. I'm showing that if you move them quickly, you don't have to worry about the peg snapping off. Rotation, you don't have to worry about twisting that peg out and it shearing. You've got the range of movement you should always have had from the beginning without the worry of it snapping. Now in regards to upgrading articulation stuff, I will have a separate video including a repaint. But as the title does say, like, this is partly a review, so just the excess stuff that this figure comes with, all the accessories, I mean, not excess, I'm glad they've included it. But we finally get wall crawling hands. I don't know why the MCU figures have never come with these before, or the MCU Spider-Man figures have never come with them. I know that Toby and Andrew did, and obviously the 3-pack integrated suit did. But the fact that it's taken so long to get them on this figure itself, or on a Tom Holland like single release figure itself, is unbelievable. Now obviously the metallic blue, it's okay. They've done an okay job of it, but it should be very reflective. It doesn't really look that reflective, so you can see me testing whether a Posca pen would work just fine to kind of add that colour in. I did scratch up the figure from trying to force it to do something it shouldn't have been able to do. That was my bad. That's not just from following the process, that's from me experimenting outside of this video. But you can see this metallic sheen is so much nicer. So I did go and do what now looks like almost a thong. It's like a full back thong. They're like tighty whities, but metallic blue at this point. And I do definitely prefer this blue to the one that's on the figure as it is, so I may go and do the entire figure painted like this. But for now, he gets to rest in his metallic blue pants. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the upgrade video.